14. For 14 straight weeks in early 1964, the Beatles had an absolute stranglehold on the Billboard Hot 100 pop charts. I mean, the British invasion was in full swing, and honestly, it felt like nothing on earth was going to break their phenomenal winning streak.
62. I really want you to let that number sink in for a second. Because the shocking twist to our story today, the artist who finally dethroned the Beatles, right at the absolute height of Beatlemania, wasn't some hot new rock band. No, it was a 62-year-old traditional jazz trumpeter who, frankly, hadn't had a hit in almost a decade.
Welcome, music students, to this explainer. Today, we're treating this as a masterclass in commercial jazz success. We're going to break down the exact cultural, strategic, and musical convergence that allowed Louis Armstrong's Hello, Dolly to pull off one of the most historic industry upsets we have ever seen. So here's the syllabus for our case study. We'll be covering the 1964 cultural landscape, Broadway as a pop jazz bridge, Joe Glazer's strategic hustle, inside the recording studio, airplay and live momentum, and finally, the ultimate chart upset.
All right, let's jump into Section 1, the 1964 cultural landscape, rock's dominance and jazz's shift.
So, picture 1964. British rock and roll is completely ruling the airwaves. It's the undisputed soundtrack of youth culture. Meanwhile, jazz had kind of lost its mainstream mass audience. Why did that happen? Well, think about the harmonic contrast at the time. The dominant trends in modern 1960s jazz, like bebop and post-bop, prioritized these really dense, abstract complexities. You had extended improvisations and super challenging rhythmic structures. Brilliant art for sure, but it demanded a lot from the everyday listener. Now, Louis Armstrong's Hello, Dolly went in the complete opposite direction. It relied on a clear, simple, diatonic framework totally rooted in repetition. It gave people a familiar, singable melody they could just latch onto right away.
Which brings us to Section 2, Broadway, the pop jazz bridge, and finding the right melody. You see, if modern jazz was a bit too complex for the pop charts, Broadway show tunes served as the perfect strategic bridge. It basically wrapped traditional jazz instrumentation in a package that pop audiences already intuitively understood. Even the song's composer, Jerry Herman, was literally shocked at the idea of Louis Armstrong recording this track. He couldn't imagine anyone less likely to succeed with it. But the crossover worked because Armstrong didn't just play it safe. He injected his unmatched, warm, conversational humanity into a very straightforward Broadway melody. When he ad-libbed that famous line, "This is Louis, Dolly," it wasn't just a lyric. It was an intimate, direct connection with the listener.
Let's move to Section 3, Joe Glazer's strategic hustle and the battle to find a record deal.
A great song simply isn't enough. You've got to have a strategy. So a song plugger brings a rough demo of Hello, Dolly to Armstrong's tough-as-nails manager, Joe Glaser. Glaser immediately heard the beat and saw massive commercial pop potential. But here's the crazy part. When he aggressively shopped the track to major mainstream labels like Columbia and RCA, they flat-out rejected it. The majors preferred less risky full-length LP albums for older legacy jazz artists. They didn't want to gamble on the hyper-competitive singles market. But Glaser? He didn't take no for an answer. He leveraged his deep industry connections to secure a deal with Dave and Mickey Cap, an independent label, Cap Records. And they were actually willing to take a chance on releasing it as a pop single.
Okay, Section 4, inside the recording studio, the production of a hit.
Let's step inside the studio on December 3, 1963. Producer Mickey Cap from the Cap Records team actively encouraged Armstrong to personalize the lyrics, bringing that intimate vocal presence right up to the front of the mix. And then came the absolute masterstroke, specific recording techniques designed to boost its appeal. They brought in Tony Gussuso to overdub the banjo, while Mickey Cap layered in some very tasteful strings and attack piano. This brilliant combination perfectly blended traditional, nostalgic New Orleans jazz with slick 1960s commercial pop sensibilities. It sounded old and brand new all at once.
Moving right along to Section 5, airplay and live momentum, igniting the spark.
So, with the production locked and the record out, manager advocacy got it to the stations, and heavy radio airplay just poured gas on the fire. But the grassroots word-of-mouth promotion was incredibly strong. So strong, actually, that audience demand started outpacing the band. Bassist Arvell Shaw remembered that audiences kept screaming for Hello, Dolly during their live Midwestern shows. The band literally had to send away for the sheet music and learn it on the road just to satisfy the relentless curtain calls they were getting every single night.
Which leads us to our final act, Section 6, the ultimate chart upset on May 9, 1964.
This is the exact moment where the cultural environment, Glazer's management strategy, Cap's studio production, and massive live radio promotion perfectly converged into one undeniable cultural force. Just looking at the Billboard Top 5 from that week, Louis Armstrong is sitting right there at number 1, officially ending the Beatles' 14-week streak and literally sandwiching the biggest rock band in the world. It proved that an accessible traditional jazz record, if produced and marketed correctly, could actually interrupt a musical revolution and dethrone rock and roll icons.
This historic victory really reminds us of the sheer weight of Armstrong's monumental career, from his days inventing the vocabulary of jazz soloing back in the 1920s and 30s to this massive pop triumph in the 1960s. His cross-generational appeal allowed him to temporarily bridge that huge divide between high art jazz and mass consumer culture. He didn't have to change who he was, he just had to present his art in a way the masses could actually feel.
While recovering in the hospital just before the song hit number 1, Armstrong was asked about competing with the Beatles. His response? Absolute perfection. He said, "Music is music. There's all kinds, but it all come from the same place." This quote anchors our entire commercial analysis in a genuine musical philosophy. Armstrong understood that audience connection ultimately transcends arbitrary genre labels. A hit is a hit because it touches people.
So based on the mechanics we've explored in today's explainer, the need for an accessible bridge, relentless management advocacy, and the humanizing power of performance, I want to leave you with this final thought for your commercial jazz studies. Look at today's highly fragmented music industry. What would it actually take for a modern legacy jazz artist to organically disrupt the pop charts once again? Could someone pull off a "Hello, Dolly" today? Thank you so much for watching. Keep analyzing the music, and I'll catch you in the next one.